Welcome back in for another episode of George in the Jungle, presented by Remington Tavern, as always. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Instagram, their handle is at Remy Tav Cincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y. Or you can follow them on Facebook. I don't know why they don't advertise their karaoke. I believe it's Tuesdays.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can add that.
But in any case, George, there's a lot that has gone on in Cincinnati sports since we last spoke on Tuesday. We have lost a manager of a team. We have seen a shutout. We have the end of a season underway this week. And there may have been the end of a season last night.
Yeah, it's true. When it comes to playoff hopes, that's, it's going to take a historic effort. I mean, you look at that. Well, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but
we'll get to it.
Find 10 wins somewhere.
We'll get to it. But I do want to start out with the lighter side of things.
Like me looking so red. Do I look more red tonight than usual? Or
well, aren't you drinking again this week?
I look pretty red.
You said last week you said you were going to be drinking again this week, so maybe that's it.
Yeah. Well, yesterday I was on a float in a parade for the Brown County Fair, and it was a buddy of mine I graduated with made this float, and it was called Antique Tobacco Workers because we all worked in tobacco, like cutting it and hanging it when I was young. And he still does it to this day. He's 66, 67 years old and is still out there cutting tobacco this past August and hanging it and all that fun stuff. But we had a ball there. And then I got back home just in time to see that debacle last night, and had a few friends over since the wife's out of town, and I guess I probably tore it up a little more than I should have. So maybe that's why I'm red.
Looking forward to her coming back and reeling you back in. But
I got to reel her back in from the pictures I'm seeing from Sarasota. Good Lord. But she's got to get out of there before that tropical storm hits.
You're not lying.
Yeah.
In any case, your Cincinnati Bearcats hosted the Houston Cougars for their first Big 12 game of the season. And all of a sudden, Scott Satterfield has already matched his win total from last season. He has hit his first 2-game win streak since the first 2 games of last season. And maybe the Bearcats got something going.
They looked pretty darn good. Looked very good Saturday. And I really appreciate UC rolling up that big lead because it allowed me to hang out in Fifth Third Arena a little longer in that air conditioning at halftime because it was brutally hot. And it's funny, Satterfield made the comment today that, it's a blackout, it's hot, the sun's beating down, and he said it looked like most of the fans had enough at halftime because not many came back in that stadium for that second half, and he was right. I walked back
crazy.
Like, good Lord, I wasn't the only one thinking it was a little hot.
It was crazy looking from the press box, looking down and seeing. I mentioned to Brent, I said, "This was a sellout," and he's like, "Yeah," and you would not know at halftime by looking at that crowd, but it wasn't close. It was hot. I mean,
right.
A blackout
on television. You can go watch it in air conditioning. And I'm telling you, there were quite a few people in Fifth Third Arena watching that game when I was in there at halftime and a little bit of the third quarter. And that idea to do that has just been terrific. That has been awesome to have that for pregame, halftime. I can't tell you how many people I know I saw in there. It was a lot of fun. And the game was a lot of fun. And, Josh Mencken setting that tone early with that interception. The Bearcats go 3 and out and have to punt it. And then it totally flipped, man, when he got that interception and the energy was back and the Bearcats able to score off of that and got on a roll, man. I mean, when you've got Sorsby throwing those balls in the bucket to Henderson like that for a couple of touchdowns, which were, I mean, those are throws. And Coach said it today. They didn't get those throws last year. Those aren't easy to make, but this guy made it look easy. Sorsby's he's been looking really good, and he's been getting a lot of help. And it's interesting that I wrote this down somewhere. 15 receptions in the game for the Bearcats by 9 different receivers. Again, they're spreading that ball around like crazy. And, Sterling Burkhalter making some plays, and I've always kind of been a fan of his and thinking he could be some help, and he's certainly being some help now. It should, and then you get to the running game and Kiner doing what he's doing and just able to grind out yards the way he does and break a few for long runs and score touchdowns. And it just really was an all-around effort. And you get to that defense and you just are, I mean, I'll tell you what, they may have found themselves a defensive coordinator. They really did a good job containing Houston in every phase. And I was a little worried about this quarterback coming in, and they made him look pedestrian. And I think they only got 1 sack, but they were able to keep everything hemmed in. They were able to keep him, hemmed in, and he wasn't able to hurt him with his feet. So I thought it was terrific the way they played. And, they showed a little bit of depth too. They played a lot of guys.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row now that Cincinnati's defense has made the other team one-dimensional in pretty much the way that they wanted to. With Miami, it was making sure they didn't run on them, forcing them to pass, and seeing if you could indeed beat them with the pass. With Houston, they took the opposite tactic, I guess. They took away the run as well, but the run was their bread and butter as opposed to forcing them into what they were good at. But either way, you did what you wanted to do. You game planned for it, and you forced the team to be completely one-dimensional. And I thought it was impressive just the way that really the defense dictated to to Houston what they were going to do the entire game. And we haven't really seen a defense do that since about a year before Luke left.
Yeah. And Houston should have been on the board. I mean, they had that short field goal. Well, it wasn't that short. It was short. It was makeable. Should have made that field goal. Guarantee you, if it had been a UC kicker missing it, we'd still be complaining about it. But
probably
still, a shutout is a shutout, and they got their donuts from the quarterback on Sunday morning, and everybody went home happy. And they did a great job with the ball, and they showed an ability to strike quickly with 4 touchdowns of at least 15 yards, which is pretty darn impressive. That, it's not getting down in the red zone and stalling. They barely had to get to the red zone. And then the other touchdown was an 8-yard run by Sorsby. So, and how about the kicker again? That ball from 46 would have been good from 60 plus, I'm sure. He drilled it, and hopefully this kid can keep doing it because that is a heck of a weapon to have. And another thing I liked that UC did, and I meant to look this up on the play chart because I forget where it was. Lichtenberg was in the game, and it was like a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. Very easily could have just punted. The game was in question then, but they let those kids out there who experience that situation in a live game, and they converted the first down. And I thought that was the right call. You don't want to rub it in on the opposing team, but you want to give your guys that are the backups and the guys that are going to be playing in the next few years. The sooner you can force feed them those live game situations like that, the better off you are. And that was a perfect example and a perfect spot to say, let's let these kids go for it, see what they're made of. It wasn't like they were going against, a fresh Alabama defense at that point. They were going against a worn down Houston defense, but still it's a situation where it's a make or break. We got to get this first down to keep this drive alive. And I thought that was a good live test to give those guys, and they passed it.
Yeah, it's really difficult to look at this game and find anything that you were particularly disappointed in. In the red zone, they were 4 for 4 on third down until they kind of got into garbage time. They were, I believe, 4 of 10, I think that's what it was before they got into the garbage time, and I think it ended up 4 of 13. But I'm fine with 4 of 10.
Yeah.
Before you start just eating the clock and doing some of that stuff.
They finished 4 of 10. They were actually at the end of the third quarter. They were 3 of 6 on third down. So then 1 of 4 in the fourth quarter when Lickney came in or whatever. But 50%, 3 of 6 through 3 quarters.
Fine by
Take
me.
it.
Yep.
Hi.
Not a lot to complain about. And in fact, Negative Phil was miserable because he had nothing to complain about in this game. Actually, that may be the most fun I've seen him have a game since Houston was in town the last time. And UC finished off that perfect season and rolled into the college football playoffs. It's funny. I didn't even think about that until Houston's running onto the field at my seats at the beginning of the game. And I looked at somebody next to him. I'm like, gosh, I forgot. But the last time they came onto this field to play was a pretty big game. It was like the biggest game ever in Nippert Stadium history, as far as I'm concerned. And it was just weird. I never thought about that all week. And it's like, damn, that was the team.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, it was just difficult to find anything to criticize them for. I thought they played probably the most complete game definitely the most complete game that Scott Satterfield has coached, and maybe the most complete game again since that year before Luke left.
Yeah, I would have to say it was definitely the most impressive 4 quarters. Probably more impressive win because it is a shutout and they were in complete command, and the game, from early on was probably not in doubt with the way they were playing. So it was impressive to go on the road in his second game last year and beat Pitt, but they were hanging on by their fingernails. And you came away from that one, kind of like, whoa, they got away with it in that second half and they escaped with their lives, basically. This was probably the most impressive win. And there's not, how many we got now? 6 with Satterfield, but this was the most impressive.
Yeah, like I said, you've already matched your win total from last season. So good on you. You're doing what you're supposed to do. We wanted them to end up at the least 3 of 4 in the first 4 games. If you're going to try and get to that 6 somewhere on your schedule, you're probably going to have to win a game or 2 that maybe you weren't favored in, maybe you shouldn't win, and you got to make your own luck. And it looks like this team is starting to kind of do that. They're starting to win the turnover battles, not by a little bit, but by a lot of bit. They're starting to find ways to, again, when you're able to just take away an entire segment of an offense, whether it be the run or the pass, that's impressive. That's not something that you should be doing to Power 4 teams. And while Miami is not that, they were MAC champions last year, I think. And preseason favorites this season as well, I believe. And Houston, call them what you will, but they're still a P4 team. And the last time that Cincinnati shut out a P4 opponent was, I think, 1995, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you're right, Virginia Tech. I did see that somewhere. The last shutout was like 2018. I forget who that was. But, yeah, the last was, what'd you say, 95, right?
Yep.
Against Virginia Tech. I think that's
Yep.
right. And, the exciting thing for me, too, is they are improving. You see that defense kind of starting to click now. And early in the year, I was a big complainer about lack of pass rush, and now they're starting to do some things, and actually the guys up front are playing better too. They're just getting better play out of these guys, and a lot of it is what you're doing now.
Sure.
When you're in a completely different scheme and you're out there for the first time, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to not be sure, and you're probably not going to play fast. And I feel like now they're starting to play fast. And then on the other side of the ball with the offense, and they're going to have to do that this week on the road, because that's going to be a fun game to watch, I hope, Saturday night out at Texas Tech. I mean, I would take a carbon copy of this game, but I don't know that that's going to happen on the road with a blackout game at 8 o'clock at Texas Tech. And I watched them Saturday when I got home against Arizona State. And while they won that game, and it wasn't ridiculously impressive. Now, I'd just gotten home from a 34-0 whitewash. I did go back out in the second half of that UC game and stayed at the end.
Nice.
I wanted to see the backups. I wanted to see some of these kids get on the field and see what they do. But Texas Tech played fairly solid. I think it's going to be a hell of a challenge. Any road game is, but going there and a Saturday night game, and UC's first road game, it's going to be like, second road game. Miami, though, was probably a 50-50 crowd or close to it, but it's going to be a tough environment. And that stadium looks really cool. They got that end zone building done, and Texas Tech looks like they've got a really good facility, a fun stadium, and so it's going to be an environment. It's going to be rocking, and it's going to UC's going to have to come out and just play settle football, and I don't think anyone will panic, but we'll see how it unfolds. But they're going to have to, steady the ship early and not let anything big happen to them to where they start having their doubts. So I'm real interested to see how they respond to all that.
Vegas expects it to be a lot of points. The over-under 58.5. That's what it opened at. That's what it's still at. The spread, however, opened at -4 in favor of Texas Tech, and that line has moved to -3.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a hell of a game, and I'm really looking forward to it. I wanted to go down to this game, but daggone, getting to Lubbock, it's not cheap, and I couldn't really find anyone to go, and I'm like, I may just go on my own. I looked at flights again Saturday. It's like, nah, I probably ought to save that for another trip, but it won't be Colorado because, I mean, you got the game ticket will be more than the flight to go out there, I think.
Well, we all remember Huggins telling us how hard it was to get to Lubbock.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
By the way, did you see that Colorado game Saturday night?
I saw the highlights.
Oh, man.
After the fact.
I'm watching that and I'm thinking, okay, I can probably, pretty soon I quit flipping back and forth. And then it's like I couldn't turn away. That game was incredible. It's just incredible. And then that Hail Mary play at the it was just unbelievable. What a great game that was. And I don't know who I was really rooting for. Probably Baylor because just, the road team and all that. And they played a hell of a game all the way up to that one play. And it was just an exciting game. I mean, Big 12 football is fun. And that game was a lot of fun.
It is that. And again, 8 o'clock Saturday night, that game in Lubbock against Texas Tech. I feel I'm trying not to get over my skis, but I feel good about Cincinnati's chances to go into Lubbock and pull off some craziness. You got a kid who takes care of the ball really, really well in Brandon Sorsby. Still has yet to turn the ball over. Corey Kiner is playing maybe his best ball of his career. And I don't even know that it's particularly close. And then
he's getting better and better. You can see the work that kid has put in. He's so strong. God dang, he's a Texas Tech has a good strong running back too. That kid is a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Joe Royer got high praise from Texas Tech's coach today. He said he's going to see him drafted in the first 3 rounds of the draft. So we'll see about that. But
there's been some buzz about that. There's been some buzz about that.
I
hope it's true.
Excited. I think it's going to be a hell of a game Saturday, come what may, and I look forward to discussing hopefully one of the best games that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I would can't wait to see it, man. It's fun to. I know it's early in the season, but it's meaningful football. I mean, this game really, really means something, and it can be one of those crossroads games for both teams. You just don't know, and it's you look at it on paper, and there's a lot of reason to think it's going to be a pretty close game, and I don't want to jinx it, but since you already said it, the UC has to continue to take care of that ball. And if Sorsby plays mistake-free football the way he has, and I've really liked his decision-making. He's really – it's rare that he does something you're like, holy crap, he forced that one, or, he should have gotten rid of that one, or he's done a great job. And I think UC got the guy they thought they were getting when they targeted him in the portal. And it's nice to see him getting better. And he's still early, very early in his career. He hasn't started a whole lot of Division I football games. And he looks like a very competent, experienced veteran back there. So that's exciting.
He talked today in his presser about how the stuff that he and Satterfield talked about while he was being recruited is coming to fruition. And so to your point, so it should be exciting, but I do want to switch gears as we get done talking about college football to talking about the college offense that beat the brakes off of the Cincinnati Bengals defense.
Yep.
I don't care what any ESPN talking head wants to say about Joe Burrow. He played his ass off, and I don't know how you can come down on a guy simply because his team didn't win for throwing over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's bananas, the amount of flack I think that he is currently taking. Some weird stuff happening after the game as Burrow and Zach Taylor go immediately, not to the locker room, but into Taylor's office to have a little quick powwow. Joe talking in his post-game presser about how he's going to reassess how he is leading this team going forward. I have read plenty of things on Twitter and social media in general. I think that the people who are pointing out that things started to go a little sideways when some of these guys started to get paid or didn't get paid might be onto something. But
yeah, there's however, it's hard to, when you're in the NFL and you put up 33 points, yes, there's probably something going on with that. 33 points should get it done against Washington, except for the way that quarterback played. And I talked about Sorsby's decision-making. That dude, and they didn't run for a lot of yards, but when they needed some yards on the ground, they got it. And that dude ran like that zone read, that read option stuff to freaking perfection. I'm reading these stories today about Jaden's touchdown. Jaden Daniels, his touchdown run for 4 or 5 yards. What I think was 4, first and goal.
Yeah.
That was, and it said he scrambled for the touchdown. He didn't scramble. He waltzed in because he pulled the ball on the frickin' dive and just walked around because he saw what he thought he was going to see, and it was perfection. That dude played a perfect game last night, and for a rookie to do that, and this all this stuff's been happening where high schools were doing it, colleges were doing it, but the pros weren't really doing that stuff for a long time. And it took a while for it to catch up. And now Jaden Daniels has walked into this situation where they're letting him do that stuff, and he's damn good at it, and it's hard to stop. Now, the Bengals should have been better on defense, and their lines got that's been very disappointing what's gone on up front. But a lot of it was that kid was perfect last night.
21 of 23, 91% for a rookie.
It's crazy.
Cincinnati, I believe the stat is 8-4 now. The last 12 times they've gone against true rookies. The rookies are 8-4. I'm sorry, Cincinnati is not 8-4. They lose to rookies.
That's a crazy stat.
More often than not.
I'd like to know who those rookies are, because I will say this, and C.J. Stroud is one of them because he beat them last year. And these kids are coming in and are game ready now, way more than at any point I can remember in my life in the NFL, to play quarterback, which is probably, when it comes to having to see and know and expect and react, is probably the hardest position in sports. At that level, it's unbelievably hard, and they're making it look easy. And he made it look easy. That was I mean, I didn't know how good that kid was going to be. He only won the Heisman, but right away, this kid is money. And well, he always, I don't know, he's got room to grow. This kid was unbelievable. And I just thought, I wrote down some, and I'm watching the game, and I'm watching him run this read option stuff, and there was like a 4th and 1. So early, where was this? It was in the 4th quarter. He had a 3rd and 1, and they did it. And then he had a 4th and 1, and he did it and got the first downs and kept that drive alive. Now, that drive only resulted in a field goal, but they kept the ball out of Joe Burrow's hand. And then that last drive to go, what was it, 70 yards and 12 plays or something. This is good. Yeah, in the 4th quarter, 12 plays, 70 yards. They get a touchdown, and they converted a 3rd and 2 with a run where, again, he pulled the ball and got a first down. And then 4th and 4, he passed the ball to Zach Ertz, who I didn't even know was still in the NFL. and then he had another big catch later. So you just got to call it what it is. And that is, that kid just had a phenomenal game, and there weren't going to be many teams beat them, but he played that Bengals defense like a banjo.
I did find the tweet. The Bengals are 3-9, actually 3-9 in their last 12 games against rookie starting quarterbacks. You have to go all the way back to 2017 for this stat to start, where they first lost to Mitchell Trubisky. In 2018, they lost to Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield twice. In 2019, they lost to Kyler Murray and Gardner Minshew. In 2020, they lost to Tua Tagovailoa. In 2021, they beat Trevor Lawrence. In 2022, they beat Kenny Pickett and Anthony Brown. In 2023, Anthony Brown of the Baltimore Ravens, the backup. In 2023, they lost to C.J. Stroud, and now in 2024, they lost to Jaden Daniels.
They lost to 2 really good ones on the last ones. I mean, those first ones, let's face it, that was kind of the dark ages, the recent dark age for the Bengals. The 90s will always be the dark ages, but there was a little stretch there that was, anybody could have beaten them with a pulse the way they were set up. But it's a crazy stat, and it shouldn't happen. But C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels are special talents that came into the league way more ready-made than I think anyone could have expected.
And that comes courtesy of Jay Morrison. I don't know if I said that or not.
Jay's good on that stuff. He spends a lot of time looking up records.
It was a just wild and crazy game. You have no turnovers, no punts. This stat says since 1920, teams that have no turnovers, no punts, and at least 33 points scored have gone 112-0. Now 112-1.
Man.
Teams with 4+ touchdowns, 0 punts, and 0 turnovers in a game were 26-0 in the Super Bowl era. They are now 26-1.
So you're telling me 33 should have done it?
Yeah,
I know.
should.
That's what I think. I know. I know. I saw some of what those guys said earlier, and it's like, yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. And the Bengals in the second quarter, they had 3 drives stall, and they had 3 field goal attempts, made 2 of them. At the time, you didn't know how bad that was going to bite them because you didn't know what Washington was going to keep running down the field the way they did. But if there's any criticism, and I would have to break down those drives to have any criticism. It's hard to criticize an offense with 33 points. To me, this all falls squarely at the feet of the defense. What those guys were, what Shannon Sharp was blasting off about this morning, I get it. You're paid to win games, and you have to outplay the other guy. But when the other guy's perfect, are you going to outplay him?
Perfect.
You know what? Joe Burrow may have won that game if he was going against the Bengals defense, but he wasn't.
Without a doubt, actually.
Right. And that's the problem with Shannon's logic.
The question I have for you, George, is this a product of half-assing it through all of spring, the summer camp?
I can't say it's not. We've seen these slow starts, and they were able to dig out of the other ones. I don't know if they're digging out of this one. Now, should they go to Carolina and win? Yes, but we kind of almost thought as a given they would come back home, perform well on Monday night, and beat the Commanders, and that didn't happen. So there's no guarantees. They're going down there against Andy Dalton, who's probably still got an axe to grind against them. I don't know if that's going to matter, but it's something. But, yeah, I mean, you've got to get these guys going in August. You got to be ready for the season, and 0-3 is not being ready for the season when 2 of the losses came against teams you were playing at home and were clearly thought to have a decent amount of more talent than the Commanders or the Patriots.
PFF has been grading guys like Geno Stone, guys like Von Bell, guys like Dax Hill low on what they've done. And people, and I think rightfully so, are getting a little critical about not inserting guys who did well last year. Maybe not one of my favorites, but a younger guy. If you're looking to find out what you have in the guys coming up, you can't find that out when you're only playing 1 snap, and that's all DJ Turner played yesterday. Yeah. When you're looking at Jordan Battle, who has played 1 snap all season, and he graded out really, really well last year.
Right.
So I don't know if you're the touchdown. I don't even know if it was a touchdown. I think it was. I was busy with Marty Gilliard. I believe it was just the deep ball on Cam Taylor Britt to Scary Terry on the left side of the field. I think that stopped just shy of the goal line.
Yeah.
But that was blown coverage by the safety. Cam Taylor Britt thought he had help over the top. He didn't have help over the top, and he ends up getting beat on the route because the safety he's in no man's land.
Right.
And if that's the case, what are you still doing in there? Either you're old and not able to keep up, or you had no idea what you were doing. Either way, maybe you throw somebody else in there who might know what they're doing. I don't know if that's Dejon Anthony. I don't know if that's Jordan Battle. But whatever you're doing right now is not working. Clearly, on defense, there is something very, very wrong. And, of course, it starts up front and the injuries that you've had along that defensive line. You bring in a guy by the name of Guy who plays, I think, 18 snaps. And, sure, Lawrence Guy did what he could on a short week, new playbook, had no idea what he was doing. Fine. But you have not this ownership group has frustrated me very, very much because you have not renegotiated contracts. You have not figured things out, how to move money to bring in more help. And instead, you honor every contract that you ever write the first time, and that's it. And at what point do you try and keep up with the Joneses?
Well, that's the NFL, and you have to. And of course, the Bengals have always been dragged kicking and screaming to keep up with that kind of stuff. You see it with, they finally have an indoor practice facility when teams in, south
they
of
have
the
a bubble.
have had it forever.
I don't know that I'm going to call it an indoor practice facility, but they have a bubble.
They have a bubble. Right. They hope the county builds them an indoor practice facility.
Right.
I'll tell you, first time I went to Houston when they had the new franchise, not the Oilers, but when the Texans, I go down to their stadium and, they've got that retractable roof, just great facility down there. Their practice facility is across the street. They had a permanent indoor facility and a bubble next to it. So I don't know what that was all about. I guess maybe the kickers can go in there while the team's in the other room. But that's in Houston. Now, does Houston need an indoor facility? I guess it gets really hot. But do they need it worse than the Bengals where you're playing in November and December and God forbid you play more than one game in January? That should have been done 25 years ago. It's so stupid.
For those
and
camps,
so you have to get them. And now here you go with the way these contracts are being handled and how you handle certain stars. And yeah, there is a cloud all around or all over this team with those contracts hanging out there. T playing out his, Jamar mad about his. That stuff builds up. And maybe that's part of what we're seeing. And maybe not everyone in August was as focused on football as they should have been. And Chase played a hell of a game last night.
He did.
He's back.
And even Trey Hendrickson, if you remember, we had to talk about him this summer as well, and his misunderstanding of how renegotiations of a contract work and all of that.
Right. And I was really surprised that he even got to that point. And I think, quite honestly, it seemed like once that passed, he was almost embarrassed about it. But still, there's things you got to have those lines of communication open. And I'm not saying they aren't. I don't know, but I hope they are. But something's going on that doesn't quite add up. And can you fix that in a week? You can probably at least get back on track enough to beat Carolina. But what about the rest of the season? I mean, they're going to probably. I mean, you're looking probably at a minimum of 10-4 now to finish the season if you're going to get in this playoff hunt.
Well, it would have to be 10-4. You're right. And I guess that's where I'm at with some of the stats that people have been posting. Like, well, since 1990, this many teams have made the playoffs at 0-3, and well, we're only the third season of 17 games. We haven't been doing 17 games very long, so some of those stats are washed at this point because it's different.
Totally. But also, I wanted to mention last night, Joseph, I think, is starting to really, really come into his form, filling in that almost like the Tyler Boyd role. I thought he had a good game last night. I'm pleased with his progress, and I think he's got a pretty high ceiling from what I've seen. So, and I think he's on track to reach that. So, but my God Almighty, you got to stop someone on defense. You can't have a game where the other team does it. The only time their kicker's on the field is to kick off or to kick an extra point or a field goal. You got to get the punter out there.
Yeah, I to your point on Yoshi, I think this is also the best tight end group that we've ever seen put together for the Bengals, legitimately, maybe ever, with Gesicki and Eric All and Tanner Hudson, who had to sit out this past game. He's still dinged up. But you also have Drew Campbell's still kicking
Right.
around.
Right.
And
No,
I think
they have some tight ends. Yeah. Offense again isn't the problem. That defense is
the running game actually looked
find itself in a hurry.
Running game even looked decent last night. I don't know that I'm ready to call the running attack great by any stretch.
No, but yeah, they're that one run by Zach Moss was hilarious, and I was surprised. I mean, he's still got some wheels, and when he reversed field on that one run, I don't know what he ended. I forget what it was now, but I just remember thinking, "Oh my God, he looked quick like Chase Brown on that play." I was surprised it was Moss, and he looked pretty damn good. So I think he's definitely got plenty of gas in that tank, and they've got to tighten up that defense. I mean, I'm a big Lou Anarumo fan, and I think he schemes the hell out of people sometimes. And I thought he did it last week at Kansas City. They did a good job out there, and that's what gave me hope. And Jaden Daniels, I guess. I mean, again, the kid played perfect, but you got to find some way to get his butt off the field and get the punter out there, and they never did it.
I also wanted to mention that I don't know that I've ever seen. Maybe we have. Maybe Matt. What was his name? The guy that left the Patriots as a coordinator to go be the head coach of Detroit.
Oh yeah.
How many times have we seen a head coach wear a backwards hat for the game? We've gone from way back when where coaches would wear suits,
right,
and now we have T-shirts and backwards hats. I thought
or Belichick with ripped up hoodies.
Until they showed the graphic that Dan Quinn was the actual head coach, I didn't know if he was a coordinator or the head coach.
Oh, I know. Wasn't that funny? I know. That was hilarious. Because he looked like the guy in Detroit.
Yeah.
When I saw him on the sidelines, I'm like, wait a minute. Is that the Lions head coach?
Well, I'm talking about the guy with the beard and the long hair, Matt Patricia.
Oh, yeah.
I think he wore backwards hats as well.
Yes, he did. He didn't last long, right?
He sure didn't. But in any case, the Bengals got to figure it out. I know that we're only 3 games into the season, but you're already looming ever close to almost a quarter of the way through the season, and you've got to start winning. Start at 1 and figure it out from there. I hope you don't get embarrassed by Andy Dalton. Cincinnati is favored 4.5 points in a game that at this point it's must win.
It is must win. If you start 0-4, you may as well just start thinking about next year.
Well, because the Ravens aren't going to make if you're struggling this badly against the run, barring injury to Derrick Henry, you're not looking great going up against Baltimore after the Panthers.
Not the way Lamar can tuck it and run too. I mean, you're in big trouble against that squad. And I haven't even thought that far ahead yet. Boy.
Because you can't look past the next game because nothing's guaranteed at this point.
No.
Nothing.
But I find it hard now to find 10 wins on that schedule.
Well, even the Panthers already have a win, so figure it out.
Yeah, and they're 3, and the Bengals are 3 games out of first already. If we were talking about the Reds being 3 games out of first, that'd be fine.
And let's finish up our show here talking about the Reds as Nick Kroll made the decision that they had philosophical differences.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 years into a tenure as manager and a year, I think it's actually 14 months, if I'm not mistaken, removed from signing an extension into 2026, we have now decided that David Bell and the organization have philosophical differences, George.
Yeah, we all know the problems run much deeper than David Bell.
Yeah, we're all throwing bullshit flags. We're all
Yeah.
throwing bullshit flags.
Right. However, some of what Nick said strikes me as I can see where he's coming from. You look at a guy like, okay, so he said things like sporadic effort from guys.
Agreed.
Saw some guys take a step backwards. I agree with that. Underperformed this year. I agree with that.
You know what?
What was it? A little undisciplined in what we did. I agree with that. And felt some of these players took a step backwards. Definitely agree with that. And I think when you look at some of the guys, obviously the Reds want to be aggressive. They have fast runners and all this. But when guys are getting thrown out on the bases all the time and there's no consequences, there's no being held accountable. When Noel de Marte goes out there, and I'm not going to say half-assed it, but it looked that way sometimes, or it looked like that kid, and maybe this is on Nick Krall. When he came off that suspensions list, he should have started in frickin' low A Daytona and fought his way back. He shouldn't be getting major league meal money and staying in 5-star hotels and traveling on charter jets with the rest of the major leaguers until he proves he can play this game without his damn drugs and do it at a high level. He's a young kid. You don't give up on him, but that's why you do this. And you send a message to this guy that nonsense will not be tolerated. I don't care what the circumstances were behind him getting suspended. You shouldn't just be back eating caviar the minute you're off suspension. So that's probably a Nick Krall problem right there. But you don't keep running him out there every night when he's out there doing what he was doing at third base, and you got another guy sitting on the bench that's hitting damn near 350 the second half of the season. So things like that obviously drive me nuts. So I think Nick Krall and the rest of the organization definitely has some accountability here, but the manager always feels the axe first. And I can't disagree with a lot of what he said, and a lot of that does rest with the manager. Now, I love David Bell, and I think he's a tremendous human being and probably, I don't want to say too nice for this job. I just think, sometimes when you have a whole roster of young players, it's just herding cats. And he didn't do a very good job of herding cats.
I think that Nick Krall's biggest issue is the way that he delivers anything in a public statement. I think he needs to work just as much as many of these players need to work on their craft. I think he needs to work with a PR firm to hone his craft, because the way that he presents things is piss poor at best. I think that there were certainly differences, but to phrase it as philosophical differences, again, 6 years in, a year removed from extending a guy through 2026, you knew what the philosophy was. I think that you just saw things change. I think that when you have a group of guys this young, there has to be lots and lots of accountability. Otherwise, you're going to end up. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the, for lack of a better phrase, the inmates running the asylum. And when you have the players who are, if they're older guys, maybe you can get away with some of that stuff because they've put their skins on the wall. They are where they're at for a reason. But you got a bunch of guys who are fighting to earn time. Nobody played really, really well. I mean, outside of Ellie, and Ellie had his own batch of issues defensively. At times, he was a liability. Defensively, at times, he was an ESPN highlight reel. So you just never really knew what you were going to get. I think that there's been plenty of development issues with the guys coming up through the system. And I think that, truthfully, that's probably the biggest issue I have with all of this is when you got guys coming up that are not showing development once they've reached the big league level, that should be where you're taking maybe the biggest step forward.
If you're still, unless you're some, a guy like Ellie, he's probably going to learn some stuff at the major league level because he's so talented. You can't keep him down there dominating minor league talent. It's not doing him any good. He's going to have to learn some stuff at the major league level. Everyone else should already know everything and be ready for the major league level. And because not many people have that talent to just carry them. He does. I thought Marte might be one of those guys last year, but obviously not even close. And I think, when he gave that extension last year, you're right. That makes you scratch your head. And if I'm the guy signing the checks, I'm like, well, wait a minute. This guy wanted to re-sign him to this extension, and now he says it's a mistake. So you got to look at that too. There's no question about it. I totally agree with that. But they definitely needed a change. And quite honestly, after what we saw this summer with these guys, and I feel bad for David because of the injuries and stuff, but there's probably some relief for him that he doesn't have to figure this crap out anymore.
Yeah, he's not going to be tossed from any more games. He'll leave as the leader, and that's where that stands. I think it's 32 games or something outlandish.
So who's next?
That's a great question. Currently, it's Freddie Benavides.
And I can't believe that Nick Kroll didn't already have, some guys in. You've always got to have guys in mind. And, have they talked to anyone? Probably not. But, my God, you've got to be somewhere along in the process in your mind of who you would like to have and what you would like to have. And fortunately for the Reds, there's guys out there. Now, are they going to pay for it? Are they going to get but there's only so many managerial jobs. I think they have a decent pool to pull from. And if I'm a guy looking at this, on the one hand, you look at the Reds and they're kind of screwed up and it's hard to win here and you're not going to, but on the other hand, you've got all this young talent that if it comes together and you feel like you're the guy that can pull them together, you can win a lot of games in the next several years. So there may be some attraction to this job because of a guy like Ellie, because of a guy like McLean, because of the young guys in the minor league system coming up, because Edwin Arroyo, put Arroyo at shortstop next year, move Ellie to third, boom. You got some problems solved right there. I don't know what you do with Marte. Maybe he can play left field. I don't know, but there's some things, or he could play right. There's some young talent to play with that a manager might want to get his hands on. Am I crazy?
You've just got to hope
that tell me I'm nuts.
Well, sure, but that's for other reasons. You just got to hope that you can also talk Banana Bob and shut the fuck up and shut the fuck up Phil into spending some money on some actual talent.
And the other cloud hanging over that is this whole Bally Sports thing going on with the bankruptcy. And I just read today that there's a lot of teams think their revenue may take about their television revenue may take like a 20% cut this offseason, which is amazing to me because as bad as the Reds are in their market and in Reds country, they still get good numbers.
Yeah, if they would ever get their heads out of their asses as a product, baseball, and figure out how to get it on some type of streaming platform, regardless if you're in market or out of market, it would do so much better. Everyone wants to watch baseball. You're literally blacking out the people who want to watch your sport.
It's yes. If I understand it the way you're saying it and the way I've seen it, yeah, it's stupid.
Kids can't even watch their favorite players play, so you're losing out on a new generation of fans because they can't watch Shohei. They can't watch Ellie because they don't have cable because everyone's gotten rid of cable.
Right. And they do have that Bally app. I don't know how that works or how much. And then, the MLB app, I was going to get that. And then it's like, well, all these games are blacked out. And because if I got YouTube TV, then I don't have Bally. So, okay, I'll get the MLB. And then it's like, well, no, you don't get – that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be a way to figure that out. There should be a way that revenue gets back to the team as some sort of supplement for what you might lose in advertising revenue on Bally. I don't know. I that wasn't my lane in television, but there's got to be a way to figure that out.
In any case, it'll be super interesting. Names that have come up that I've seen: Skip Schumacher of the Miami Marlins is currently the guy who's leading the odds, who is the top of all the lists that I have seen. I don't know why you would leave. It's almost like out of the frying pan into the fire, leaving the Miami Marlins organization and hopping into bed with the Cincinnati Reds. I don't blame a guy who would maybe even just take a year off rather than go from the organizational mess that is the Miami Marlins to the organizational mess that is the Cincinnati Reds. Unless you're just trying to figure out if you can be the guy. Maybe you'd like a challenge. I don't know. We'll see. Other names that I've seen, though, include Barry Larkin, of course, Miguel Cairo. I saw Aaron Boone mentioned. I've seen David Ross, Corky Miller mentioned by Zach Cozart, saying he wanted to see him get a chance. Brad Ausmus.
Something.
So there's a decent pool out there.
I don't think Francona would come out of retirement. And
Terry Francona was on the odds as well.
I don't know. And I don't know, like, hopefully everything's well health-wise and all that with him, but he had a great run, and I don't know that he's going to want to do that. And that's a guy they should have gotten their hands on 20 years ago, and they didn't. And they really, 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 really should have. He's been good for every organization he's been in, whether as a player or a manager or whatever role. He's got some serious value, and I would love to see it. I just don't know, is he the right fit here? I don't know. Will Venable's a guy, I saw his name tossed out there, and you look a little more into him, and he's a very, very interesting prospect in my book. Miguel Cairo would be he's something. I could see that happening, but yeah, I think Skip's probably and I don't know if Barry wants to do it because it's a grind. It is a grind to do, to be a major league manager. I mean, you say goodbye in February and you get your head back above water in October or November. It is a grind, and you've got to be all in. You've just got it. That's what you eat, sleep, breathe, everything. And Barry's kind of got made right now. Do you want to jump into something?
He doesn't even go on the road currently. He just stays for the home thing. I don't see it. I don't see it.
I don't either. I'm with you on that. So I would say Skip. And then, I've seen Scott Service name thrown out there. I don't know about that. But I would put Skip at the head of the list, and I would have right behind him probably Cairo and David Ross and maybe Venable in there as well. I don't think they'll – and it sounded like that Derek Johnson's he's under contract for another year. Now, you want your manager to bring in the guys they're comfortable with and – build their staff, but I can't imagine anyone not wanting that guy. But we'll see. I would think he may be around, but I don't think they would make him the manager. I really don't. I could be wrong. He's on top of everything, but I just don't know. And then we can hear we can hear the Aerosmith song every time he comes out to talk to the umps, I guess.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if DJ got the call up.
Yeah, I would too.
Skip.
And I think same with Pat Kelly, who's won 2,000 games in minor league baseball. But as he said, I lost 2,000 before I won 2,000. So there's that. But I've seen his name, but I don't think that's it either. It sounds trite and it sounds like just, it's almost cliche, but you got to have someone that connect with these guys. And they've got a young roster.
I was going to say you need someone who's a blend somehow, and I guess almost built in the Dusty Baker mold. That is,
but it can't be someone like me. I mean, I've got nothing in common, and
that's what I'm saying.
With a 23-year-old guy, like yes, I can hold a little bit of a conversation, but when they start feeding me pop culture stuff, I'm gone. I'm done. Anything post 1989, I don't even know what they're talking about.
You've got to find somebody like a Dusty who is a blend of old school, because I think this team needs some type of old school reel in.
Agree.
But also can get the buy-in and be some type of players coach. It can't be the same level that David Bell was the players coach, because
I think Skip's got a lot of old school in him. You know who else does? And he is and still probably can connect on every level is Aaron Boone. I mean, seriously.
If the Yankees parted ways, Aaron Boone is still under contract.
I mean, he's used to playing with his roster has been loaded.
I don't think Aaron Boone would.
Smart guy.
Yeah, I don't think he'd come. I don't think he'd come back for this.
I don't think so either. But if he did, I wonder how many teams have been managed by a father and then later managed by their son. I don't know.
I don't either.
I'm sure it's happened a lot of times. The Bells probably just missed. Buddy was in the organization, but never manager, right? No. But yeah, but there's people out there. I think the bottom line that we've talked here, there's some viable candidates that it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they bring in. And, people want fiery or you got to get the right guy.
We just had fiery. He got kicked out of more games than any other manager ever.
That's what's funny. He's so laid back until that switch flips. And I don't know if that served him well, but I'll tell you what. Every time he got tossed, I cried because he went out of his mind. And then that time he got in that fight with the Pirates. He got kicked out of the game and comes running out of the manager's office, out of the dugout, and got in that fight. That's when I really liked him. I thought, God dang, they'll do anything for this guy, but unfortunately it didn't work out.
Well, last topic, and this won't be long, but FC Cincinnati does draw against Nashville in their most recent game on Saturday, 2-2. And they're tied with Columbus in the table standings.
Yep, still they're tied for second. They've got LAFC coming in, and the interesting thing, LAFC's fourth place in the West, but they have not won an MLS contest since July 20th. Now they had that break in there, and the Leagues Cup and that U.S. Open Cup and all that, but they're 0-3-2 in their last 5 matches. So I would suspect they are ripe for the taking for a home match for FC Cincinnati on Saturday.
Well, with my luck, I'd bet Cincinnati, and it'll be another draw. So,
right. With your luck, I agree.
Yeah. Anything going on in high school?
Great games this week again. I mean, Moeller 4-1 at LaSalle, who's off to an undefeated start, 5-0. What else we got? St. X and Elder, so it's, big GCL week in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Anderson is still piling up the points like crazy. Anderson plays at Milford, who's coming off a loss against West Claremont, which surprised me. Good win by West Claremont there. In Northern Kentucky, Cooper 5-0 at Highlands, who's 4-1. That's a huge game in Class 5A. And Ryle off to a 4-1 start, going down to play the storied program at Louisville St. X.
Oh, Desmond Ritter School.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless you have anything else, sir.
Nope. Time to grab another drink.
It was a bit
out of town.
It was a busy week, but we do thank those of you who tuned in with us live here on the show and those who are listening to us in the podcast form. But as always, thanks to Remington Tavern. They can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. But for George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We will see you back here, same channel, 9 o'clock, to discuss all things Cincinnati sports.
Thank you, Aaron.